of the things I always ask founders is this, and the reason I ask for it is because I am also on a lot of pitch panels. So I sit side by side investors and have done so for years. And they always ask this question: where did your idea come from, or why are you solving this idea? And they're asking this question for a number of reasons. One of the core reasons is quite simply they want to see your relationship with this pain point. And if you have a relationship with it, then there is a good chance that you're one of the first customers for this product, for the solution that's about to be presented. So we call it a light bulb moment. When was your light bulb moment? I was looking around for this, that, the other. I found this really frustrating, or this process, whatever it was, whether it was B2B, B2C, and hey, I think I can do this better. And the other version of this is, we call it an insider idea. And that would mean you have a lot of experience in a sector. And this typically becomes a B2B startup, where you're working in a sector, often fintech or a SaaS product, and you can see a better way with a process, and you come up with that idea. So either way is good, because it's showing your relationship to that idea. But if there's anything that I'm going to if there's anything that you'll remember from this presentation today, please just remember this slide. Stop building. We see so many founders, and I've just started a new cohort last week in the Founder Institute. 39 very eager founders who have all got great ideas and keen to get those ideas to launch. And I have about 6 what I call we have an advanced group, so we put them together. They're all building. And this week I gave this exact talk, they all got office hours with me and said, oh, we're afraid that we haven't gone through this process and we've already started building something. And that's the message here. How can you build something when you haven't done a thorough validation process? And I'll show you what thorough means. We're not talking about, surely they've been sensible enough to get on the phone or try to hustle a meeting with an odd customer or two to ask them some questions. But even the way they go about asking those questions to the customer is usually completely wrong. And I'm going to talk about that as well. So that's the message. But look, just to start the tone, what is the number one reason startups fail? Does anyone like to unmute themselves and give me a guess? What's your thoughts on this? What is the number one reason startups fail?
Failure to prepare.
Sorry. Yeah, so Nadia's got a hand up. Gideon, anyone can.
I was at an event last night. Sorry, I'm off video, but I've just arrived from the gym. I was at an event last night, and they said the 2 reasons. One is they run out of cash, and I don't remember the second one.
Gideon?
I always have that CB Insights data in my head. No market need is up there.
Yeah, both of you are actually right. So that's really interesting to see that. If you look at this is in actually the top 10 order. So lack of a market need is over 40% of failures are from that, and what was said earlier as well, lack of cash. So the message here is to validate, because if you don't achieve product market fit, which is your ultimate goal here, you cannot scale a company. It's impossible. You have to have product market fit. Is everyone familiar with that term?
Can I ask a question though?
Please.
On that point. If a company, say like Uber, there was a company before Uber that started it and wasn't that successful. So if one fails and another succeeds in the same market, how does that make it a market fit? I don't understand the...
Yeah, sure. That's a really good example. I'm just trying to think of the name of that company because it's often used in a lot of case studies. It's got a lot, there's so many variables here that it's got a lot to do with, I would first and foremost say, with the team. Okay, so who are the founders behind the startup? You know, they've got different capabilities, different experiences, different tolerances. Now, you might say, well, what's he talking about? The amount of founders that we see drop out of our program, so I said we started with 39, we will graduate around about 15 to 16 companies. So less than half will drop out. And that's the stamina, the work ethic, all of that. You know, the founders just like giving up. Oh, look, this is too hard, etc., etc. So without knowing or speaking or having the founders of the original company here to tell us why, there's a whole bunch of reasons why they could have given up. They may have not been able to fund or been convinced. They may have got funding launched, but then it's often the more dangerous rounds are Series A, where you think, oh, I've got a pre-seed round, I've got a seed round, I'm doing so well. A lot of startups fail even when they've been funded pre-seed and seed. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. So these founders of the original Uber, let's just call it that, because I can't think of the name, you know, they may have failed to get their next round, and without cash, you know, as you can see, it's the second biggest problem why they fail. The market need was surely there, but there could have been a number of reasons why. It could have been their tech. Who knows what their tech was like? Okay, so there's a whole bunch of reasons. Product market fit means you've got a product fit for the market, and the market wants it, and they're buying it. That's as simple as it gets as far as an explanation. Did that help explain?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. We'll just keep moving on. I'm conscious of time. So when I speak to my founders, I say to them, there are 3 areas that you need to validate. So they are the pain point, the market, and the product, to then have a chance of getting product market fit. So pain point, market, and product, and I'll drill down to these areas in a minute. What you're looking for is a product where the pain point is higher and the accessibility is higher. So there's less friction, it's user-friendly, because these are many reasons why, as we're going back to that case study, that potentially the other one failed. You know, it could have been clunky, it could have been really not user-friendly. And I'm sure we've all used Uber, and it's quite user-friendly. I always say to founders, you should be asking this question every time to your customers when you're validating and questioning them about various things. I love using this term on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being you can't live without it, 0 being you don't care. Where would you rate this problem or what I'm talking about? And it could be different aspects of the problem. I would ask this directly about the problem itself that you're intending on solving, but I would also use that technique to ask them about other questions when they, I'm going to talk about the interviewing process shortly, but when they give you responses, to really try to flush out truths, because this might sound a bit weird, but you do get a lot of misinformation when you're interviewing customers. I'm not sure if you've had that experience, and there's a real skill of trying to understand, is that really accurate or not? So then asking, I usually say, on a scale of 0 to 10, how bad is that? You know, that experience you just told me. And then when you get them to rate it, they often sit back and go, oh, you know, it wasn't that bad, about 6. But a minute ago, they told you it was the worst thing that ever happened to them. So I guess the message I'm giving you here is it's one thing about to get the answers off your intended customers. It's another thing to be able to interpret that information correctly. So how do we get product market fit? These 2 questions are super important. Hopefully the key points are on the slides like this for your takeaways. You should always be asking yourself, how does this problem get solved today by my customer? And again, I'm just going to share my experience. Too many times I see founders not actually talking about indirect solutions. Just because Uber was brought up, let's use that. If I was going to launch an Uber before Uber was, and I was thinking about transport from A to B, what would you say was the competitors or how someone could solve that problem today? Anyone want to, what would you say if you were doing the market research for, and you were going to launch Uber, that was your idea before Uber came out themselves with it, what would you say are the current solutions for someone to solve the same problem? Anyone want to have a guess?
An existing taxi firm, a local taxi firm.
A local taxi firm, an obvious one. Yep. Anything else?
Hail a cab on the street.
Yep. Okay, great. Anything else?
Car hire.
Car hire. Brilliant. Now we're starting to get into it. That's what I'm looking for. What else?
Public
A
transport.
bus.
Sorry, Chris?
Public transport.
Public transport. Why public transport? Because I'm doing an Uber.
Well, I think sometimes you can, before Uber, I reckon a lot of people would get public transport, but Uber's made it easier, cheaper. So,
But you're saying the right things, and forgive me, Chris, but why though?
well, I think, well, Uber didn't exist then, so you didn't really have the option to. So I think people would default to using public transport instead.
Okay. In an
It's on
indirect way,
demand, isn't it?
sorry, Gideon?
It's on demand. It's, you know, it's, you don't have to
It
wait for
is,
a bus
but
or a train.
It is, but what is the bus and the public transport doing for that customer?
It's taking them from A to B.
It has no doubt involved.
I think
public transport runs on a schedule that you know, and therefore it removes the doubt that exists in I'm standing waiting for a black cab and I don't know how long it's going to take to arrive. That's what Uber, that is the fundamental problem that Uber solved, was through their app of being able to tell you in advance, paying in advance and telling you when it was going to arrive in advance and seeing the route. It removed all the doubt in the situation for you.
Creative reliability.
Yeah. So I couldn't see who was saying that. So I think that's a brilliant response. But I just want to come back to what was said, that I guess at the end of the day, regardless of whether it's bus, train, walking, I was hoping someone would say walking for shorter distances, they are my options as a consumer to get from A to B, right? And then whoever's mentioned the improvements to that experience, that's of course a given. You know, hey, it's on demand, because that's what they introduced. It's on demand. My credit card is in the app. I don't have to go look for. How many times we're in a black cab and I haven't got any money, could you go swing by the ATM? And I used to do that all the time. I never had cash on me, and that's annoying, right? So I'm putting that aside to not mix the message here. The message is, when you're doing a validation study and talking and researching the market, what you need to be looking at is all the direct and indirect options for that customer to solve that problem. And if I was going from A to B is my problem, I can use all those means of transport, from walking to hiring cars to hailing a cab the traditional way. I can't think of the other cab. There was another cab company where they used to always be down a little alleyway in the city. And trains and buses and automobiles, etc., etc. Okay, and you might say, well, why would I need to? Because that is what is an option to your customer, because they have that as an option. Today they may say, I'm going to use the bus. Tomorrow they may say, I'm going to use the train. And the next day they may say, that's short enough, I can walk. I don't need an Uber. So Uber then made it more enticing for them to use Uber by all those other points that was made by somebody about the convenience, on demand, credit card in there, don't have to go look for cash, etc. But it's a starting point. It's where you should start. The other thing is, in the same conversation, how much am I expecting my customers to change habit? And there was a small change of habit, but not much. They are hailing a cab on the side of the street. They're on the side of the street with their phone. Do they have phones already? Yes, they do. Do they have apps where they put credit cards into those apps already? Yes, they do. So there was very little change. But it's interesting how many times I see founders expecting big leaps of changes of behaviors for customers to use their solution. And that potentially is wrought with danger. So
just to throw one in there, Richard. One I would mention electric scooters and electric bikes. I think if it's nowadays because they're a competitor. But in regards to Uber, I'm working kind of customer experience design. For me, it was the rating and the behavioral change in the rating where you could rate your driver, so their behavior would change towards you, and then the driver could rate the passenger so that their behavior inside the car was then changed. And I feel that changed completely the dynamic of what was happening inside the car, which to me, this is what I think, not what I know, but that was a huge difference in how the experience of Uber was.
It's an interesting discussion, Neil, and thanks for bringing it up, because I could say I know some friends who work for Uber in the States, and that is somewhat debatable. If we had an hour or so, we could go for it. But I guess yeah, you are somewhat right, because my co-founder is a UX UI specialist, so I'm used to sitting with him and listening to these discussions of how we increase and elevate the user experience. But I'm pushing that aside and saying before that, we need to just start considering what are the options open to my customer. What am I competing with? And if you then understand that, which is proper market validation and a proper market study, you then understand how to make your user experience better. Now let's go there and say, right, here's what I need to just acknowledge these are the options open to my customer. Now to elevate my option and my customer experience, how do I do that? And you're right. They then said, right, if we introduce ratings, there'll be a better experience. People will have a more enjoyable ride. Riders I love a conversation with an Uber driver. It's one of my favorite times to come back from a business trip and get on from the airport to get home. I enjoy it. And most of them, 90% of them, are willing to have a great conversation with you, probably because of the rating system, if that wasn't there. So I do agree with you, but what I'm just trying to, I'd love to chat about that. I can chat about that all day long, about customer experience, but this is about the beginning of starting a business and how you formulate what your solution, how you come up with what your solution is going to be. And it's the consideration of what there is now, because so many founders, when I talk and say, well, who's your biggest competition? They don't know. And when I volunteer the competition, say, what about this company or this company? Have you heard of them? They'll say no, or yes, they will say yes. So what do you know about them? And I'm horrified is probably the word, that they're building and already spending somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 50 grand building something, and they haven't been a customer of one of their biggest, or they don't know basic answers about their biggest competitor. And that's what this message is about. A lot of you would know this or have seen this process. It's been referred to by many as the lean process. Eric Ries's book, if you haven't read it, I'll make reference to it right at the end. It's having this idea, it's going away, building, you've got early prototypes. Here's the part we're talking about, the measuring, the gathering of data, the gathering of information from customers and the marketplace, and learning and adjusting and going through that cycle. I'm going to explain it in a little bit more detail, so don't worry if you don't quite get it just yet. So what should you do? This is something that, again, I just face all the time when I ask founders, what are you assuming in your business? And they'll say, what do you mean? So what hypothesis do you have at this early stage? And a lot of them don't have one, or don't know that they have one, but everyone does have one. So what are the assumptions are you making? You should, at any given time, have 3 or 4 of them at the top of a list. Pin them on a wall in your workshop, or in your work room or your war room, whatever you want to call it, and look at them on a daily basis. Every time you have a conversation with a key stakeholder, a customer, of course, even a supplier, if you're a marketplace like our business is, you know, you've got another stakeholder on the other end asking them. Every conversation I have, I'm always pointing to my assumptions. Even if, and you'll see this, we're several hundred interviews later, and I will still ask the same questions and pretend that I haven't heard the answers from that individual. Okay, so this is a super important piece of information to this process. So I will introduce to you MentorLabs, which has been kindly mentioned at the start. I'm a co-founder of a mentoring platform, marketplace. In the last 18 months, we've been prototyping, validating, and as I said, we're over 300 interviews now. What is MentorLabs? We are an on-demand mentoring platform. And in my role at Founder Institute, as I mentioned, been doing that for 5 years, I saw a gap that just continually kept staring me in the face, as it were. And that gap was the last few seats of our cohort that we try to fill. When I speak to the founders who have applied and passed through the testing and ask them, are they going to join? When they say no, in a lot of cases, the answer or reason for saying no was the same each and every time. And that reason was, I'm not ready to commit to a 3-month program, and I'm not ready to give equity in my startup for the program. And so digging deeper, I would ask, are they still going ahead and with the idea? They say, yes, I'm definitely looking to launch this business, but they're looking for a more ad hoc mentoring service. And so then they'd ask me. So I was doing a lot of this work with the permission of FI, of course. There was a feeling that if they got mentoring from me, they might come into the program later on, and a couple of them did. But the need was right there, staring me in the face, as I say, that there are early stage founders that want on-demand mentoring from mentor specialists of all areas. Whether it's pitch deck development, customer development, product development, whatever it is, ideation, which is what I would mentor them on, have a mentoring session and go. They might come back in a week, they might come back in a month, they might not come back at all. No commitment, no subscriptions, no long-term commitment to a program, and no equity. So that's what I was assuming. So just to follow back into where we left off, we were making these assumptions that there are founders that needed help starting their business and getting their idea to launch on an ad hoc on-demand basis. They didn't want to commit to a long-term program. They didn't want to give away equity, appoint advisors formally, pay for long-term subscriptions like our competitors. You'll notice that point there. And they were willing to pay for this on-demand mentoring. So they're assumptions, okay? Everyone makes, this is a real key point here, whether you think you are or you're not, everybody is making an assumption or some assumptions when they're launching a business. And it's really interesting when you force yourself to stop and think about what they are, and then think, well, I wonder whether I'm right or wrong. So here comes the slightly heavy bit. So I'll make this as painless as possible. I just wanted to show you what we did. So here are some of the examples of the questions we asked around those assumptions. So this was validating the pain point. So, obviously in the early what I'm speaking about is online surveys that we did. So get to know your customer. In our case, a founder. What stage is your idea? How far have you gone with your idea? In other words, have they done some research already, or is it just a basic idea? Have they done a business plan, prototyping, and MVP? It's just starting to set a tone and a picture for us. Where do you see your biggest pain points and why? What help have you had so far? Give us some examples. Have you paid for this help? Have you ever had a formal mentor? Notice how I'm easing them into that topic without selling them the idea. Okay, there is a lot more questions. I'm only just giving you a snapshot just to give you an idea of what is needed. We went out initially to 200 founders to explore the pain point, to understand everything there is about them. From this 200, we then selected 150 to move forward with. Does that make sense? So around 78% of them answered our questions in the way we were hoping they were answering them in that way. And so we dug deeper again and created another survey. Now, you might wonder why 15. It was just because of the tool we were using gave us a maximum of 15 questions. It was free. Like every founder, we bootstrap and we don't like spending a lot of money. So there are tools. I'll tell you some of the tools you can do that with. So then the next lot that came out, we started questioning the market. We took those 78% and moved them forward and dropped off the others, said, you're not our customer. And now that's an interesting point I'm going to come back to. Why would I do that? Why wouldn't I just interview them again? Because not everyone's going to be your customer. So and let me just illustrate this. A founder for us is not a founder. There's a founder, there's like, you could line up 100 founders. And just to sort of illustrate this, I woke up this morning thinking I should put a slide to illustrate this. If there was a lineup of founders and there was 100 founders, our ideal founder that would use this platform is probably number 18 to 25. Does that make sense? None of the others. And you will only know that through this process. So we took that 78% and we said, right, let's start asking them about, because they said yes to mentoring. They had mentoring experience. So as you could see, the first question, you said you had formal mentoring. I want to know all about it. Okay, was it in person? Was it an online platform? What was the quality like? Here it is, rated out of 0 to 10. Always a good tool to use. Did you return? Did you ask for more? Did you have more sessions? How many did you book? Was it with the same mentor company or platform? If no, why? What was the length of the session? We're starting to understand what others are doing. This is market validation, remember. And were you happy with the time frame? Did you feel like you got value? Explain your answer. So after this survey, interestingly, it went narrower again. And we were down to 75 founders, 50%, who proved our hypothesis true. And then we started identifying this 18 to 25 in my 100 lineup of founders. We started to identify who or what type of founder or persona, if you know what that means. Does everyone know what a persona is? Customer persona? Yep. Okay. So we started to identify who our ideal customer is. And we actively, now that we did a couple of 100 surveys, we started to actively look for this latest persona discovery. We thought, this is our founder right here, the one's giving us this response. Okay. So then just finally, we started to validate solution ideas. Now, this is probably one of the most interesting ones because a lot of founders jump to this really quickly. Did your mentor session, was it in person or online? Did you prefer that method and why? Did you feel your mentor understood the problems and addressed them, etc., etc.? I'm just going to put up all these questions and I'm going to just talk to you about them. Number 2 gave us full confidence with the responses we got, that we were okay to look at launching an online mentoring platform rather than have mentor bookings and they meet face to face. Number 3 gave us confidence that we needed to improve the communication of the founders prior to the mentor session, because there was it took a while for them to explain the problems and then they used half their time, was a lot of the complaints. So we have introduced into our beta, but into our early prototypes, we introduced an electronic agenda that that the founder could fill out first, and it gets sent to the mentor. That was the intent. And we asked founders and mentors, what did they think of that idea? Because that was through this validation and this questioning that raised that concern. Number 4, demonstrated that where the best advice was given, it was direct. Sometimes I've got quotes here, even tough for the founder to hear, but it was the best rated advice they received, and it helped them understand that they're on the right path or the wrong path. So what did this do for MentorLabs? It helped us create a brand promise. Any mentor coming on our platform must give direct, actionable feedback. And not only that, at the end of the session, there's an electronic form that automates to the mentor. In order for them to get paid, they must fill that out, and it goes into the dashboard of the founder. I think I could talk about this all day long, but I think it might start getting a bit boring. But I don't know if anyone's got any questions, but I'm just trying to show you the correlation of really good questioning and validation work and how it should shape what you're doing.
My camera and mic are off. Oh.
Sorry, hello? Was that a question? I didn't hear that.
Sorry, Kim, was that a question?
No, it wasn't. I tapped the wrong key. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
No worries.
Thanks for checking in though, Rich. Loving it.
No worries at all. So look, there's a lot of other things here. Do you feel that the mentor made you accountable to the advice they gave? And then our beta has got just real hints at that, because it was starting to get out of hand in terms of the build cost. But we've got the advice going into the founder's dashboard, and they can tick it off, and then the mentor gets alerted that they've finished that, and they can connect again for another session, and just things like that. We ask questions, do you recall the advice? And a lot of the founders said, oh no, we would remember a few key points, but we'd forget. So what did we do? We tested a in-platform video, so you don't have to go out onto Zoom, and we record that session, and we put that in the dashboard, not only of the mentor, but the founder, so they can refer back to that. So all these, I guess the message I'm giving you is, my co-founder and I, who are very product focused and have got lots of product experience, could have just went out and built something where this is what they'll want. Sure, they want that because we know. And sure, we've got good experience in the industry. Both of us, we've built and we've actually worked on other projects together, a fintech, a leisure tech app. And we do have experience, but we're not, dare I say, arrogant enough to go, well, we know. Founders don't know, customers know. You need to speak to your customer. Here's an interesting point. We never sold our idea, not once, in our customer surveys and interviews. We just kept gathering information, and hopefully the types of questioning that you saw there gives you a bit of a feel of how to go about do that. It's so important to listen to your customer, because they know, you don't. So just in summary on that, what we did was we went out wide with our surveys, and we did second surveys, third surveys, and so as it narrows in, and once you feel like this is your customer, this is the persona I need to find, and I need to discover where there's more of them, go out wide again, and then start doing face-to-face interviews. We used tools like Typeform and SurveyMonkey. Typeform's my favorite for the 15 free questions. I'm not sure if it's still the same. That was 18 months ago. And we also use a fantastic tool. I had a workshop with these guys last night. Prolific, they're an audience builder. So if you think, how do I go out to 200? How do I find 200 people? For about 60, 70 pounds, you can find an audience and build an audience on this platform of about 200 people. You can pick any demographic, UK, US mainly. backgrounds, areas where they're living, children, age of children, jobs, income, religious beliefs, the whole lot. And then you can create that audience on your assumption that this is who you think is your customer. And then as the survey responses come in, you can see it adjusts. And then you get to, this is my customer. Okay, so here's another big takeaway. If you don't remember anything else, remember this. Bad news is good at this stage. It saves you time and money. You know, this and the stop building message are the two messages I want to give here, because it's just, it's sad when I see and know of lots of experiences where founders have spent thousands building something, but they haven't gone through this process. How are we doing for time, just as a check-in?
We're a bit over, Rich, but
okay,
we can forgive you because it's been brilliant.
Okay, so look, just because there's a lot of the next few slides I can go through quite quickly. Do I have 5?
Yeah, and I think there's some questions in the room as well.
Okay, all right. So just to say, we've put 6 prototypes into testing when we were doing the questions and the surveys and the face-to-face interviews, and now only then were we comfortable to put the beta out. Now beta comes out in 2 weeks. There is another sort of small section of this about do's and don'ts with interview techniques, because again, they're basic things, but you wouldn't believe when I get invited to sit on some of these interviews with my founders in Founder Institute, we just see it all the time. Interviewing face-to-face, don't sell your idea, talk more about the value proposition. Here's an interesting point. Talk about specific examples that they have experienced in the past. If your interviewee is talking about future and speculating, it's worth nothing. You want to know about what happened to them in the past, how it affected them, and what actions did they take or not take, because that's what you can rely on. That's reliable information, not speculation about the future. Ask open questions, let them be the expert. You may, when a couple of you have asked questions, heard me say, yeah, but why, but why, but why? One of my favorite techniques is the 5 why process, which I can't remember the gentleman that invented that, but Toyota adopted it to drill down and get to the real answers and truths. When you adopt that, it's amazing the information you can get out of your customer. The obvious one, don't ask your mum. You want to speak to non-biased people who will tell you the truth. Your mum spent all her life learning how to encourage you and say that terrible painting you did in grade 3 was absolutely her favorite picture. So the desired outcome, you need to prove your assumptions correct or incorrect. Either way, hopefully correct, but the message here is incorrect is actually okay, because it's going to save you a lot of time and money. And just coming back to this point here, when you're doing this process, we did it 6 times with prototypes. After a whole bunch of information gathering, we pivoted, because the only thing that matters is achieving product market fit. That's what we need to remember. And here's some books that I enjoy reading that's all about this stuff. If you haven't read any of these, this is the latest one I've read, Investable Entrepreneur. It's an absolute beauty. Sorry, that last bit felt a bit rushed, but that's me.
Thank you very much, Rich. That's been fabulous. Any questions? Tom?
Rich, thank you so much. You know, I'm so glad to have met you. And Ollie, thank you so much for bringing Rich to us. And God, you've talked some good sense, Rich. I think you had me in the first 2 slides when you said ideation was the first slide and stop building was the second. And I thought, my God, this man knows what he's talking about. I had a particular question. You brought up, sorry, for context, I should say, I do the kind of brand building that immediately kind of follows what you do. So I'm particularly interested in this. You brought up one of my trigger words, which is persona. Can you delve into that as much as you can in the time that we've got? Because the problem that I have in what I do is that I often meet founders who have done their product market fit, and they have this kind of logical explanation, even a very good one of the type that you might have helped them create. but they haven't thought about empathy. They haven't thought about they've thought about demographics, but they haven't thought about a psychographic profile nearly so much. How much do you think about psychographics?
100%. That, and that's why we kind of touched on that a little bit here, and I just had to have that clarity of this is an ideation discussion. I could go down that path of the customer journey one about, you know, the Uber ratings and getting a bottle of water when you hop in the Uber. That's all about, you know, this, you know, the using empathy maps. We use that all the time. You know, okay, when you go through a thorough process like I've just demonstrated to say, right, and it's still up to chance. You know, this is not a guarantee it's giving you the best chance of success. It's not guaranteeing success. Okay. So then we think, okay, we're going to push this beta out. This is based on all this research that we've done, but it also considers, once we understand our persona, what motivates them, what gets them out of bed, what do they hate, what do they love, etc., etc., etc. All those things have to be implemented into your solution, because if it's not, then, you know, there's a chance that, you know, again, you're solving the right problem for the right market, but they don't like your solution because it doesn't appeal to them, because you haven't actually empathized with the customer. So it's absolutely crucial, because on a big line, I guess I like to use illustrations. What I spoke about today is the very, very front bit, which is about 10%. Yours, thank you so much. Yours is the next bit. The next.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to talk to you some more about this if that's possible.
Sure, happy to,
That'd
Tom.
be amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Chris.
Yeah, just saying. For context, my background is I build and sell software products. That's my background. I think really good talk, all really good stuff. One thing I found really useful is filming people. So it sounds really strange, but watch what people do. So when we launch a new product, if I'm doing some research, I'll just get them to get their laptop out and be like, okay, how do you do this? Like, what do you actually do? I'm going to film you on my phone. I'm going to watch all the steps. I'm going to look at all the stuff you do. Like, what takes you the longest time? And I think actually filming people means you can go back and look at it and try and really understand the process. And if you get people to speak out loud, that's even better. So they're just explaining what they're doing and you're filming them, and you've got this sort of log of exactly what they actually do rather than what they say they do. Because
it's absolutely, it's a really, really crucial point, Chris. I only always get about 20 minutes, and I tend to push it out to half an hour in my talks, even in FI, and I'm running that. They only allow me to, because we have other speakers. But you know, there's a platform called usertesting.com, and you know, if you haven't got the skills, obviously you do, it sounds like it, but you can adopt that platform to say, here's my prototype, and go and interview 30, 40, 50 customers, and they record it. And when you saw my slide that said we've done 6 prototypes, we absolutely recorded it. You know, I wouldn't even, I don't think I had anyone who resisted it. I said, can I record this so we can look at it later? And it's really interesting, sort of touching on what Tom said, you know, looking at their body language and their behavior when they struggle to do something, because we write a script and we say, we want you to do this, follow that script. And you're just observing. You're not telling them anything, but just observing. And that's a big dead giveaway. Hence we did 6 and changed our UI. We changed our UX in a couple of places because things didn't make sense to people, even though they made sense to us. And this is that message, you know, well, what, you know, let's just push this out to the market, but there's a huge chance that it's confusing, it's got friction, etc. So the testing that you're talking about is absolutely vital as part of this process.
Thanks, Chris. Neil.
Yeah, Chris. I guess to contextualize where it was, I kind of built my career on helping large corporates understand their purpose and behave like startups and innovators. So driving in culturally difficult areas. One thing I might have missed was just that understanding of where you see or look for in your founders, that sense of purpose and value, and why are they doing this beyond being an entrepreneur saying, I want to be rich, I want to sell my company for them, all of that kind of financial based things. The things that I believe is that the businesses that are really successful are the ones that have a really strong idea of purpose. What is the purpose of what they're trying to achieve? So
the Founder Institute has spent quite a bit of money developing and personalizing a DNA test, a founder DNA test, and we get any applicant into the program needs to apply through and using that test. And what it does, I actually posted something up on LinkedIn a short while ago. And just on that note, I will get we'll get a link for you if you want to connect. But if you have a look at that, it just gives you an idea of some of the attributes that we look for in a founder. And it's really interesting, the work that you do, because I talk about this a lot. I actually also do some lectures at York University for their international students on entrepreneurship. And I talk about this a lot because some of them say, oh, why am I doing this? Because I'm not going to start a company. But I say to them, but you'd be surprised how many corporates now are looking for individuals, who they employ to have these entrepreneurial qualities. And they are, curiosity, openness, which is a bit too broad, but what that means is they're open to receiving feedback, their work ethic. And in other words, as you know, you fail a lot as an entrepreneur. And some people can't deal with that. So they stop, they quit. Maybe that's the previous Uber people. But, the type of individual that says, yep, that was a mistake, I learned from it, and get back up on the horse, as it were, and again, and again, and again. They're the attributes. There's a whole bunch more open to a certain level of risk, they're risk takers. But I'm just trying to think of all the other attributes that we look for. But there are certain attributes that make what we believe make up a good founder. And they're the ones that we look for. I'm not sure if that's fully answered your question. Sorry, Neil, but.
About the individual, I think for me, I was probably driving at the purpose of the idea for the business. But they're probably related, it's just.
Yeah, okay. And specifically, what about the purpose, though?
Well, I feel that, when people come to, ideas for a business, rather than I think this is a good idea, or I see this evolving AI technology or something like that, it's a matter of, well, what do you want to do with it? What is the purpose? What is the end result? What is your legacy? What is your ambition? And beyond making money or doing something that's quite trendy, what is the ambition of the business and the purpose of the business?
I hear you. So I guess we talk about that in our first week of our program, which is the vision and which is part of the ideation talk that I had. I less talk about vision because there are other experts in our team that do that. But that is part of, where do you see yourself or this business, solving world peace or reducing carbon emissions or reducing, plastic off our oceans by this % in this time frame. They're measurable goals. Absolutely do. But just to emphasize, we actually care less about that, interesting enough, and I appreciate a corporate would want to care more about it, and we care more about the individual and their attributes, because what we believe is when we get that right individual with a certain mix of the right attributes, we can steer them and get them to solve the world peace eventually, or something good for rather than the other way around.
Cool. No, I'm sure we could talk for hours on this. So yeah, that's good.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Neil. Gideon.
Trying to find the mute button. Thanks, Rich. Super interesting. And again, context-wise, I am a market researcher and I run a business that specializes in helping startups. So your talk is music to my ears, and the process you follow is the question I have is a bit selfish, and to pick your brains a little bit about why so many founders don't follow this process. It seems it's pretty straightforward, it's logical, it's obvious that you'd validate your ideas and and speak to your customers before you start building stuff, but so many don't. And I'm wondering if you had any insights into that from your experience on
Yeah,
Founder
I
Institute and elsewhere.
actually spoke to a girlfriend of mine who's a psychiatrist in Australia about this, because I'm really interested in that side of things, because it is beyond my understanding and capability. But what I do know is the behaviors, and I do know that when I ask and question founders about their competitors or this, that, the other, they don't know. And all of my very small opinion on this, because I'm not qualified about behaviors and you know, the human psyche, it's we don't like negative news. We don't like looking at, you know, we kind of feel like we hide from looking at what we believe is true in terms of, I'm just talking about the competitors because that's the obvious one, because I don't want to know, oh, I don't want to know about that. They're not doing it as good as I'll do it. But they are. And you want to know what they're doing well, because you want to see the gaps of what they're not, because there's always something they're not doing well. I became a mentor of one of my biggest competitors in America, who's funded their A round. And I was just blown away at how easy I could get in the door. And that was something to me to go, right, we need to vet better than they do. And my co-founder became a founder and got mentored by the mentors on their platform, and we just understood the experience. And look, they're doing a lot of good things, but there's a lot that they weren't doing, and we saw so many holes. And we were in I call it our war room, and we got the, you know, the whiteboards out, and we just went nuts and doing these, you know, and now let's pull out our validation and confirm that's what our customers told us they were complaining about, and here's the holes match the complaints. It couldn't, I mean, I'm making it sound easy, but if you're not that thorough, there's a good potential you'll fail. And I guess where I've come from and where my co-founders come from, we're okay with failure, and maybe that's it, you know, because others aren't okay with failure. This has to work. So I just want to hide from all the negative news. I don't want a customer to tell me I'm wrong. And my attitude is, I want a customer to tell me I'm wrong, so then I can find the right way. It's quite interesting. And it could be, you know, I've started a few and failed a few, right? But I'm willing to fail again before I go and spend much more of my life. I haven't had my weekends and spare time for the last 18 months. And I don't want to continue that for 5 years and then find out. I want to find out now, or I wanted to find out 12 months ago when I was interviewing my customers.
Yeah, I think it's a mindset thing, isn't it? Often it's no, that's really interesting. Thank you. That sort of validates what I was thinking.